What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel, Clemente Collector. And today is a special episode. If you're watching to look at cards, especially baseball cards, there won't be any other than the ones behind me. Today is all about the Steelers and the Steelers being in the playoffs this weekend. And me and John are two diehard Steeler fans. So me and John just wanted to talk about the Steelers in the playoff game this weekend. So thanks for coming on the show, John.
Well, thanks for having me, Theo. I hope we get to do this more than 1 week. Let me put it. We
Yeah,
can hopefully there's a second playoff game to
yeah.
preview after this one.
Let's plan that. If they win, we'll do a preview for the next game. How about that?
There we go. It sounds like I'm in.
Okay. All right. So let's start off. This has been one of the craziest Steelers seasons I can remember. Could you describe the season in one word? Because I have one word to describe it.
I don't know. I don't know if you can count it as one word if you don't put a space between them. I think you can count it as one word. Roller coaster.
That's what I had written down too. I swear to you.
I mean, it's one thing. A roller coaster is one thing. It's just
yeah. I put the hyphen in there.
Yeah, there you go. Hyphenated and we found a loophole. Yeah, roller coaster, Theo. I mean, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. Just kind of up and downs. I mean, at different points through the year, it didn't look like we'd even be talking about a playoff game. And yet here it is. Let's listen. Think back 4 or 5 weeks. You lose to 2-10 teams at home in back-to-back weeks. No one was thinking playoffs at that point. Matter of fact, most people are like, hey, this is going to be the first year Mike Tomlin has a losing record. And if he's losing the 2-10 teams at home, look at the rest of the schedule. How is he going to pull this off? He's going to have that first blemish on his record. And yet here he is, where the Steelers are, and him at 10-7. And, a first-round playoff game against a tough team. It's a tall task, and we'll talk about all that. But 4 or 5 weeks ago, I know me and you talk about this every so often. We weren't even thinking playoffs. We were talking about everything but and Tomlin's future and this guy. Where what are they going to do with him? And the everybody's darling Kenny Pickett. Like our thoughts there. So. It has been a crazy Steelers year. I mean, there isn't too many years that aren't some form of fashion crazy, but this one a little bit more so than some recent years.
Yeah, I think the first big hurdle we had was with the offensive coordinator, obviously, where Matt Canada was in there. Everybody was giving him a hard time. I saw some people that had like a one-sheeter with 4 plays on it, and that was Canada's playbook. And he was kind of like Canada was the scapegoat there for the first half of the season. And it seemed like Tomlin didn't want to get rid of him. And then it kind of everybody kind of turned their venom to it seemed like Tomlin. And then everybody turned their venom to Trubisky. And it's been interesting how the finger pointing's been going on. But let's talk about Mason Rudolph. What's your thoughts on Mason Rudolph so far?
Well, listen, he's the guy right now moving the offense. He's the guy putting points on the board like hasn't been done prior this year, right? And that you go with the hot hand. No one on this, all 3 quarterbacks here, Theo, Trubisky, Mason, and Kenny. I mean, Mason's played the best out of the 3 as far as what we've seen. And the other 2, and let's speak specifically to Kenny Pickett. Everyone said, well, he's the starter, he's the future. But his track record has done nothing to solidify that. So, someone say, well, how can you lose your job to sort of a career backup? But he didn't earn, he got the job, but he didn't do enough to me to, keep the job so you can't lose the job. And Rudolph has come in, no picks, moved the ball, thrown the ball vertically down the field. Something we really haven't seen a lot of prior. And I don't know who you want to blame for that deal, whether it's the offensive coordinators, Canada, and others, Sullivan, Faulkner, whoever's you want to blame, Tomlin himself. but now we're seeing more vertical plays.
Yep.
And you're taking the top off the defense a little bit. You're less predictable when that happens. So I think Rudolph gives them the best chance to win this game. And when you get in the playoffs, you know, I'm preaching to the choir here, and probably people listening. You don't get a mulligan, right? You lose, it's over. It doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter what the point spread is. There's no losers bracket to fight back out of. You lose, you're with everyone else that didn't make the playoffs in the same boat. You just got an extra game. So you got to go with who you feel gives you the best chance to win. This isn't about hurting someone's feelings or damaging them long term. This is about trying to win one game at a time and keep your season going. And I think, to me, if Tomlin would have went with Kenny Pickett at this point, I think he would have had problems in the locker room. I think he would have had players going to him privately or maybe even publicly, dropping a few lines here and there of their thoughts. So he knows. Tomlin's been around a long time. Whether you love him or hate him or somewhere in between, he's got a lot of experience. He knows kind of the temperature of that locker room and what kind of people. And the way Rudolph's been playing, and I'll ask you, this is more of a question for you too. I think you can see the body language on some, especially obviously on the offensive side of the ball, Theo. There's a little more pep in steps, if you know what I mean. And that's huge, And we just had a game where Pickens didn't catch a ball, right? Now normally that means he's going to pout and probably have a soundbite for the Pittsburgh media. And he was actually very upbeat because they won and they're going to the playoffs. And so I think there's a different temperature with Rudolph, under center, behind center. I think it gives them their best chance to pull out what would be an upset based on the point spread, which is one of the highest, playoff point spreads we've seen in years. At I believe last time I checked, it was either 9.5 or 10 points.
Yeah, I 100% agree. You can just tell the players believe in Rudolph. Even the defense seems to have more of an edge with some of the backups that we have to play as starters right now. And I guess, what's your answer to, Rudolph came in here and the first impressions for me was, well, how didn't the coaches see this at minicamp? How didn't the coaches see this at practice? This guy's been on the roster for 4 or 5 years now. How is it possible that we put Trubisky in and played him for 2.5 games of horrible football? It's mind-numbing to me. And everybody's giving Tomlin credit instead of saying, how did this happen? It took us losing to 2-10 teams for Tomlin to be forced to put Rudolph in. I honestly think if those games would have been close, I think he would have tried Trubisky again. Now, here's my perception. My perception is Trubisky still had a big guaranteed money left this year. I want to say $7 million. He makes a lot for a backup because he could have been the starter this year. My assumption is that they followed the money and they gave Trubisky the ball because of that. But I just think that's a loser mentality. But what do you say? Do you think Rudolph sucks at practice, or do you think it had to do with the contract?
I think you're onto something. I think money talks. I think in a way that's why, I don't want it to be to pick on Pickett night, but I think that's why Pickett's gotten 25 starts. I mean, you look at the body of work, Theo, he's not great. He's not good at making progressions. He's not good at reading defenses. His accuracy's been called into question. We've seen him miss wide open guys. We've seen him even on bubble screens or just screens if they're behind players. We've seen him even on throws where the receiver makes a play to catch it. Then they get lit up by a defender. But Pickett's the first round number 20 pick, right? So they're really trying to push that narrative. When he got hurt, you obviously have to start someone else. And I think you're exactly right, Theo. I think they went with the money guy next in line. I will say this, though, not now, but I thought Trubisky was going to be a better player in Pittsburgh than he ultimately turned out to be. And I think we've seen probably the last of them, barring another injury or multiple injuries. I don't think he'll be back next year. I'd be very surprised.
I'd be surprised if he's on the roster next season, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I would too. And I thought, I thought he was going to be. I didn't ever really think he was going to be like the long-term next guy, but I thought he was capable of being a 2 to 3 year stopgap until you find that next superstar, if you will, that next Big Ben type where you don't have to worry really for double-digit years. It didn't work, it didn't work out. He wasn't as good as I thought he was going to be. Frankly, he played better in Chicago, and they got rid of him. So I don't know why that is. I don't know, if it just maybe we built him up in our own minds as, too much, or maybe we picked on Chicago too much. Well, Pittsburgh's not Chicago. Coaches know what they're doing here. The roster's better. And I'm not saying any of that stuff's untrue, but maybe it's not that big of a factor when a quarterback doesn't have it. As we think, sometimes we think, you can fix things or you can fix players. And maybe Trubisky's just not that good. Maybe it's just kind of a backup type for a game or two. And that's, I think, ultimately what he started to show now. So he'll be in the league. It probably won't be in Pittsburgh. Not going to be a starter, barring injury. And he's just going to be a depth piece in the quarterback room. I thought he was going to be better than that, and just didn't work out. He got chances. I mean, he's got no one else to blame. I think people wanted him to succeed. I mean, they were chanting his name as well when Pickett was struggling there. So people kind of gave him a clean slate. He just didn't do enough to, warrant that to keep it. And here we are with Mason Rudolph, who, full disclosure, I'm a credit where credit's due guy. He's playing very well right now. But last time we really saw him for any extended period of time, he wasn't great. And I wasn't a big Mason Rudolph guy. And I'm not saying he's the long-term guy, but he's got to be the guy for right now. You
got to look at the fact, though. Kenny Pickett has I think he has the most comebacks in like the first 2 seasons of any quarterback. But what does that mean? It means that he's losing. That's what it means. And I gave Kenny Pickett a fair shot, and I still want him to have a fair shot next year. But what has it been, 3 games with Rudolph? We haven't had any come from behind drives at the end because we've been winning. we don't even remember a time when games weren't close, because every game was like what a 2-point game, like forever. Like we were getting the differential on every game was ridiculous. But let's turn this around real quick. If you're Omar Khan and let's just say Trubisky's gone, obviously, are you trying to get Mason, and are you having an open competition at camp next year? Are you trying to draft a quarterback? Are you trying to go after Kirk Cousins, who's injured? What would be your plan if Mason plays the same in the Buffalo game and we lose as he's been playing?
Boy, I that's so much variables there, Theo. Yeah. I got a feeling I think they'd like to keep Mason now with what they've seen here as of late, but I think somebody else might pony up and pay him, not starters kind of money, but more than just backup money. Kind of like, hey, come in and compete, and at worst, you'll be the number 2 at worst. And I don't know if Pittsburgh's willing to pay that, whatever that is. You know what I mean? So do they go out and sign or trade, sign a cut Russell Wilson? I would have liked that more 3 or 4 years ago than in 2024. Where they're going to draft, that this is the problem with being kind of consistently over 500, but not really a threat in the postseason, is you're picking in the middle of the pack. And so those high impact quarterbacks, right, are going to probably be most of them off the board. Now I know there's look at Brock Purdy, right, the last pick in the draft, right? Those are just unheard of stories, though, and you can't rely on that. And Kenny Pickett, look at how he's struggling. He was the first pick. He was the first quarterback off the board in 2022 at number 20. And he had if you look at the prospect and scouting and draft reports on him, Theo, he had a 3rd or 4th round grade, and yet the Steelers, picked him at 20. Now, I kind of gave him the benefit of the doubt. He plays in their backyard. He plays at the time Heinz Field, right? They see him. Maybe they knew something. He had one great year at Pitt, and frankly, a lot of that was Jordan Addison. So I think they fell. I think hindsight being 2020, I think the Steelers fell in love with a highlight tape that was sort of blurred by performances by Jordan Addison, who's now doing his thing with the Vikings in the NFL. So I think they took a swing, and when you swing, sometimes you miss. Sometimes you hit a home run, and sometimes you miss. And I think we've seen with the quarterback position, and this isn't just the Steelers. We've seen a lot of teams miss on quarterback. It's the toughest position to play.
Yeah, that was going to be my point. Is I think the media, especially the Pittsburgh media, is being unfair to the Steelers. Granted, they saw Pickett every day, like you said, but it's the 20th pick. We've seen 1st overall, 2nd overall, 3rd overall quarterbacks all fail, and it's less than a coin flip succeeding on picking a 1st-round quarterback, let alone one in the 20s. I do think the media is being a little bit unfair, and they keep comparing Pickett to they'll put up Pickett versus Joe Flacco and Pickett it's like, yeah, that's easy. I could put Joe Flacco against Mahomes this year. We could play that game, but everybody in Pittsburgh wants to play the game of, well, we could have Joe Flacco right now. I'm like, calm down, guys. We're not the last team that's ever drafted a quarterback that's not doing very well. You know what I mean?
You hit it right on the head, Theo. I think the problem there, though, and you know where I'm going here, is it's you miss sometimes. Every team's done it. Not every quarterback that's ever been picked has turned out to be what that team thought they were when they picked them, right? The problem is now when you hang on too long, then you set the organization back, and that's one of my fears as a fan. I don't know about you, and I'll spin it around. My fear is maybe they've seen 24, 25 games of what Pickett's, to me, is thus far capable of doing, and he struggles to hit the 200-yard passing mark. He's got one game where he's thrown more than one touchdown. He has plenty of games where he's not even thrown a touchdown. Mm-hmm. He's not very mobile. I already said about what I see him with struggling with progressions and reading defenses and accuracy. So when do you kind of admit your mistake and say, man, we took a shot, and we missed, and now we've got to go to plan B. Plan A didn't succeed. We've got to go to plan B. Whatever plan B is, you brought up some scenarios. Do they draft somebody? Do they sign a free agent? Do they try to trade for Justin Fields, who looks like that price tag is going to be very expensive? So I'm starting to doubt that might be a possibility. Do they try to find someone off the scrap heap? I've heard names again, we mentioned him, Russell Wilson. I've even heard Aaron Rodgers. I've heard, the Jets have sort of are out on the Aaron Rodgers just with all the off the field stuff and just outspoken.
That was an absolute fiasco this year. It was a carousel of horrible quarterbacks. Here's what, if I'm Omar Khan, this is what I do. I offer Mason a similar contract that Trubisky recently had a couple years ago, where it's 2 guaranteed years. I want to say it was between $8 and $9 million a season. The 3rd year is an option for the team. And I tell him that you outplayed Pickett. You're the front runner going into camp, but it's a competition between you guys. Yeah. If he says I'm out of here, because if I was him, I wouldn't trust Tomlin. I'm sorry. He put him in 3rd string. Yeah. If I was him, agree. I would think that they're lying to me, that I'm going to sit on the bench no matter how good I do in camp. So I would probably leave. But if they can get Rudolph locked in, I would have a competition. I would use the 1st round draft on either middle linebacker or shore up that defensive line. Hayward is getting old. His contract's huge. I think he's going to retire, to be honest with you. But I think we need a D lineman or a middle linebacker with that first pick this year. So,
yeah, I agree with you with the pick because I think where they're going to be picking Theo, 17, 18, 19, somewhere in there, they're probably not going to get what, in my opinion, I'm not, Mel Kiper Jr., or Todd McShay, but I don't know if you're going to get the quarterback that you can feel overconfident with going in there. So that's a question. And then let's say Mason Rudolph signs and you don't take a quarterback with that first round pick, which they probably wouldn't for sure at that point.
Right.
Do you still take one in the draft? Do you try to find a late diamond in the rough in the third, fourth, or even a later round? You try to pull the Brock Purdy out of your hat trick.
Yeah.
They might do that, but again, I'm not probably going to have that much confidence in that kind of pick. But I guess it's worth the shot depending on who it is. Or do you, maybe not obviously Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers, but maybe sign someone like a Gardner Minshew type and almost have a three-way competition in camp where no one's like Rudolph. Let's say Rudolph is the front runner. It's his job to lose. And Pickett's number 2. And you get someone like a Minshew, and I'm just throwing his name out there. I'm not necessarily saying him, but someone of that ilk. And you say, hey, let's muddy the waters and see if one of these guys is like spaghetti, right? You throw it at the wall and hopefully one sticks out more than the others, and you take a flyer in that way. It's going to be an interesting off season. I think that's an understatement, especially in the quarterback room. And like you said, Theo, Mason may, I don't blame him either. You hit it right on the head. He's probably gonna get offers. He's gonna have other offers besides whatever the Steelers try to do with him, and so it's gonna be up to him. I'm familiar here. Yeah, I don't like how certain things went at certain times, but I'm familiar with this roster. I like my teammates. I'm going to give it another crack. Or is another team, whoever they might be, going to basically guarantee him, at least for a year, you're the starter. Here's what we're going to pay you. You're going to be the starter for 2024. We're not going to think about 1 year at a time. And I wonder if that might happen. And then that's his ticket way to go out to Pittsburgh, almost on a good note where he can tell Pittsburgh media and fans, like, I love playing here. It's nothing against my teammates or the fans, but, I want an opportunity to start. And I was kind of pretty much told that was my job coming into camp. And that was what, put me over the top and why I signed with that team. And that's what I think. If you're asking me like to put on my, fortune telling hat, I think that's what happens. I think Trubisky, I think Rudolph signs going in as a starter somewhere else, wherever that may be. And now it's Pickett. I still think Trubisky's done, regardless of what happens with Rudolph. I think they've tried that. It wasn't a success.
Yeah.
And then that goes back. Then what do? Do you pony up and trade for Fields? Do you take a flyer on a Russell Wilson? Or does that change what you do in the first round? Do you try to trade up and maybe get, a May from North Carolina or someone else? I don't think you're going to get Caleb Williams, who's probably going to be the first pick by the Bears. Speaking of Justin Fields, so but do you get that second or third guy in a deep quarterback draft? And that's this year's class is deeper than the class that Pickett was the first quarterback off.
I think that was the most shallow quarterback draft in probably the last 20 years. But let's we're going to switch gears. We're going to start talking about the Buffalo.
Yeah.
But my one point about Fields is, and I'll just make it is the asking price is a second round pick, but I think they would go as far down as a third round pick. My issue with the Fields is I feel like you have to sign him to a long-term deal. I feel like you can't just trade a second or third round pick, get him for one season, and then if he does do what you think he's going to do, I just don't see why it's worthwhile. So I feel like you kind of the money commitment to me is the biggest hurdle with Fields. It's not actually the draft pick commitment. But let's talk about the Bills game. So the big headline right now, and this might tomorrow morning, people might already have the answer, but is the weather. So they're supposed to get a blizzard. They're supposed to have a lot of wind there. And they might have a state of emergency, and the game possibly could move to somewhere like Cleveland is a rumor. So I personally feel the Steelers playing in a blizzard against a superior offensive team than them. I feel like it's to their advantage. I feel like the game moving to Cleveland would be to their disadvantage. But what do you think about that? Do you think it's to their disadvantage to move the game?
Well, I think, listen, I don't think anyone's going to compare Mason Rudolph to Josh Allen. And I know Allen's been turning the ball over here and there, but they've been winning despite those turnovers. You know, he sort of reminds me, you know, of a Brett Favre, a younger Brett Favre, who's going to make a mistake here and there, but then make 3 great plays, and they always seem to come out on top. And then you laugh about the pick if you're a Packers fan, or in this case, a Bills fan. But if the winds are 30 miles an hour, it's low visibility, right? That's the great equalizer. And if you take the passing game off the table, which may happen in those kind of conditions, if the game's not moved into more stable weather, I like our running backs, our two-headed monster in Harris and Warren. I like it better than Cook and Latavius Murray. I don't think Cook and Latavius Murray are terrible. I don't think, you say, oh, Pittsburgh's game's over, Pittsburgh's won. I think it does move that meter a little bit more over to the Steelers for chances of winning. There's a defense to be played as well. We're missing arguably the greatest player in the league right now in TJ Watt. That's a huge miss. I know Nate Herbig has played well in spots, but he's going to be asked to do it now, for a full 60 minutes almost. And he's not TJ Watt. So it's there's 2 sides of the ball, and then there's a third side with special teams. Don't get me going there with Presley Harvin, but
oh my God.
I think if the weather's poor and that's where we're playing, I think it makes that 10-point spread a little less looking like a 10-point underdog. Does that mean we win? Not necessarily, but I think it gives us a better chance, if you will. And it's sad that we have to rely on the weather.
Well,
talk about, but it's true. No, I get the question.
It's a big storyline though, too. I mean,
yeah. It's important. It's going to affect other games too. Not just we're obviously here to talk about the Steelers, but there's some other stories. The weather is going to affect a few of these games in some form or fashion. So I'll take the Steelers running game over what the Bills have. But I would take Josh Allen over Mason Rudolph. So but if they can't get the ball in the air right, then it becomes a running game and a defensive game. And I like our running game, better than the Bills right now.
Yeah, so I did a same game parlay when the news of the weather came out. I did under on points, Steelers plus 10. Allen under on yards, Allen under on completions, Allen under on attempts, Allen under on touchdowns. I got for $5, I got $300. I'll win $300. But if it is weird, it's looking like a decent bet to place.
Now, do you have it where if let's say they did move the game to a neutral field, would
I don't
where
think
the weather's not affected?
I don't think
I think you can pull out as long as they do it in time. I think you might not get the whole bet back. But
I could do a cash out maybe. Yeah.
If you choose to.
The game line did shift from 4. I want to say it was a little bit around. It was around 40 to 35. 35 was the over under. But talking about Watt, I have a stat for you. So with Watt, we're 69-33. 69-33 with Watt playing. So we've played 11 games without Watt. It seems like more, actually. But we've played 11 games without Watt starting. What do you think the record is in those 11 games?
And I don't know this.
Okay.
So this is a complete guess. I'm going to say 3-8.
1-10.
Right.
That's not. It doesn't make me feel very good.
I thought 3-8 was bad, and it's 1-10, right?
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, I think that goes to show you, Theo, right? How big he is to this team. You know what I mean? Like, listen, some of those early wins. I know they got 10 wins in the regular season here somehow, some way, but those first 4 or 5 or 6 were really heavy defensive wins. You took the defensive out. No offense, again, I don't want this to be the pick on Penny show.
No, but we had the record for the most games when they they had more yards than us, but we won. Like, it was like
we
crazy.
won because of our defense. Frankly, I'll say it. We won. I joke with my son, who's also a Steeler fan, and I'm like, I wonder what's being said in that locker room between the defensive players and the offensive players. I've coached football, again, not the NFL. I'm not comparing that, but I've seen locker rooms. I played football where if one side of the ball feels like, hey, we're carrying this team here, pick it up, fellas. Like, if you feel like the other side of the ball is not pulling their weight, things are said behind closed doors. Like, let's go, dude. We can't do this every week. You got to step your game up. We stepped our game up. And so I wonder how much of that we'll never really know until someone writes a book later on down the line and kind of tells all. But I wouldn't be shocked if some of that was going on behind the scenes. I've heard rumors that certain players went to Tomlin and said, Pickett's not getting it done. What else can we do? Maybe a wide receiver who didn't feel like they're touching the ball enough, right? So, we won a lot of games on defense. We have one of the better defenses in the league. We have we're missing them this week, but probably the best defensive player overall in the league. And now I got to try to go into an away game, at least at this point. It's in Buffalo, and go in as a double-digit dog and try to pull this out.
We have our 2 safeties back.
That will help.
Minka's back, KZ's back, and they are 2 hardest hitting safeties in the league, in my opinion. They're so hard hitting that they injure themselves or injure other people. But I think that's a big part of this. We've been playing with 2 safeties that were 2 guys that were off the street, plus Patrick Peterson, who was a cornerback. They moved him to safety. Like, this is a big deal. I'm not saying I'd rather not have Watt than them 2, but at least it makes our defense better. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. It's gonna, especially if the game becomes a run-heavy game, right? Mm-hmm. Those safeties coming up and laying the smackdown, like you said, they both can lay the wood. So, and maybe cause a turnover, right? If the weather's bad, don't forget. Everyone says, well, you can't throw the ball. Well, if it's snowy and slippery, and that ball can squirt out without being hit in those kind of conditions. Then you're getting laid out by a Minka or a KZ that could create a turnover, and other guys too. I don't want to make it like they're the only ones, but you get where I'm going here. So yeah, that I'd rather have them 2 back than have all 3 not playing, and then I'd really feel a lot less confident with potentially pulling this up.
Yeah. So why don't we do our keys to the Steelers winning this game? What you want to start? What are your keys to the Steelers winning?
I think you got to control time of possession, right? The less Josh Allen has the ball in his hands, right, the less damage he can do. You want to win that time of possession battle. It's old school football, right? It's old school Steeler football, ground and pound. I think you got the 2 guys that proven they can do that for you, and that's a nice thing. You can always have sort of fresh legs, when Harris is in on a series, you can have Warren catching his breath and then come in nice and refreshed, and vice versa. I think that's the key. But the other thing, and this is, I'm going to answer this question, Theo, as if the weather's really not a factor. Okay.
Okay.
Obviously, the weather is the gorilla in the room, right? But the weather not being a factor, right? You still got a ground and pound time of possession. That doesn't change.
Right.
But you also one of the things the Steelers offense has been this year is sort of predictable, right? Run on first down, run on second down, pass on third down, right? Change that up a little bit. I'm not saying you don't have a run heavier offense, but mix in a first down pass, or keep the defense, in this case the Bills defense, on their heels, not knowing what you may do on any particular down. But if you're gonna run pass, right, you're gonna see a lot of stacked boxes. And I don't care how good Najee and Jalen is, when you have 8 men that know you're getting the ball and are there waiting for you, that's a tough task. And we've seen that happen this year. So mix, change, don't be predictable. But run heavy, time of possession, take the time off the clock. Obviously, not only time of possession, but these long drives have to be more touchdowns rather than field goals, especially with how fast the Bills can score. Again, assuming the weather's not taking the ball out of the air.
Yeah, I'll tell you what though. With the wet field condition last week, obviously. I'm not gonna say he was perfect. Rudolph had a couple times he got to snap and it was slippery or it was a low snap, and luckily he didn't lose any of his fumbles. But I'll tell you what, he made some good passes with that weather last week, so that kind of gives me a little bit of hope. But my keys to the game for the Steelers to win is I think we have to contain Josh Allen in the pocket. He's obviously got probably top 3 best running quarterback in the league. So I think we need to keep him in the pocket, and especially if the weather's bad. I don't think the throws will be there for him. And James Cook has been getting a lot of screen passes since they changed offensive coordinators. I think that's one of my keys also is to keep an eye on Cook on the screen passes, because if we give up some long screen passes, I think it's going to be a long day for the defense. Offensive keys of the game, I hope they can run like last week. They really pounded the crap out of that ball last week, and I think another key though is we have to win the turnover battle, and that starts with the running backs. Warren, I was so worried about him getting the ball at the end of the game last week. He dropped two or three balls. It looked like the ball was so slippery. I'll tell you what, if weather's a factor, I don't want to see a lot of Warren this week, because I don't trust him right now. He wasn't holding the ball well.
But I get it.
I think those are my keys. Is we got to win the turnover battle, run, and the defense has to keep Josh Allen in the pocket. So,
yeah, here's what I'll say to somebody. Like, I don't disagree with Josh Allen and keeping him in the pocket. He can hurt you with his feet and legs. I think we've seen that. He, like you touched on, one of the best in the league at doing that. What happens though, and I don't root for injuries. I don't want someone to think, man, that's terrible to say. He has a tendency to not slide though, and try to get that extra yard or two. And if he's trying to get that extra yard or two, and Minka's there, or KZ or someone else, and they lay a hit on him, quarterbacks out of the pocket past the line of scrimmage are runners. And if they don't give themselves up, they can be laid out. And we've seen him get hurt. That's how most of his injuries have happened, is not in the pocket getting sacked, but like not taking what's there, sliding and living for the next play, trying to play a little hero ball, getting an extra yard or two, or fighting for an extra yard or two, taking a nice hit on your shoulder, and he's in the blue tent getting that shoulder looked at, missing at least a few plays, and in some cases he's been out a game or two. So out of the pocket, long as they can, he's going to get out of the pocket, but if he's going to do that a lot, make them feel. I used to tell my defense as a defense coordinator, make him feel you, meaning the quarterback or the running back, right?
Yeah.
Let him know you're there. You want to run, you're going to get hit. And if he's not going to slide and give himself up, and he's one of those quarterbacks that doesn't like to do it all the time. Where other ones are looking to do. Sometimes they slide too soon because they're trying to live for it. Allen's not that guy. And then one way I commend him is, you can say, well, he's a warrior. He plays hard. But when you're that important to your team and your offense, don't fight for that extra yard or two unless it's like a fourth down and you need it or the game's over. If it's just a regular series. But he has a tendency to do that, Theo. And so if he's going to do that and he wants to expose himself to a hit and potentially risk an injury, then you take advantage of that as a defense. The guy that scares me, and we can talk about Stephon Diggs, and I don't know if Gabe Davis is going to play. The guy that scares me right now in this matchup the most for Buffalo is Dalton Kincaid. We have trouble with tight ends on the opposing teams. If you watch this game, he is the real deal. He's a heck of a tight end. They still got Dawson Knox.
Yeah, he came back.
Yeah. So I'm worried about the tight end factor for the Bills, especially if the weather's not a factor in the balls in the air. I think that they're going to look for them. Our linebackers, which has been a weak point, as you know, Theo, trying to cover those tight ends. I think, Sean McDermott's a smart guy. I think he's going to at least initially try to exploit that linebacker tight end matchup. It's going to be on Pittsburgh to take that away. My fear is they can't do it, or they don't do enough of a good job, and that's what gets us.
Yeah, I can't disagree. It's nice to have a Roberts back at middle linebacker, but the other middle linebackers, Miles Jack, and I forget the other guy's name that we signed. But yeah, I'm worried about that. I trust Joey Porter Jr. on Diggs, especially if it's bad weather. I mean, geez, he's really just got to watch the screen passes. To be honest with you, that's the main thing he's got to watch. But I agree. Those are good points. And I think with Josh Allen, he's the type of guy, he sacrifices his body in the regular season. When it comes to playoff time, he wants this so bad. He hasn't made a Super Bowl yet, and he's had all this promise. He's gonna lay out there. So I agree with you. If we can get some good licks on him.
And again, I'm not saying play dirty. I hope that doesn't come. But if he's not going to get down, right, he becomes a running back. And if you can hit a quarterback like he's a running back and take advantage of that fact, you got to do it. That's just common. That's common football sense. And if he's gonna take that chance and play that game, I don't even know who the backup is. It used to be Matt Barkley in Buffalo, but whoever it is,
if the backup comes in, it's going to be a good day for us.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm not going to cry tears for Josh Allen, at least not during the game, right? So, I'd rather take my chances with Buffalo's backup. We know what Josh Allen's capable of. So, if that's the game, if that's kind of how he wants to play, we got to make him earn those kind of plays and those kind of yards. And if he gets hurt on a particular play because he's fighting for an extra yard or two, then that's on him. And we'll take our chances with whoever the next guy up after him is. I'm confident to say they're not as good as Josh Allen. So the tight ends scare me though, and so I hope they're devising something to sort of that being a factor, because I think that's what the Bills and McDermott are going to see on film and try to exploit, come Sunday.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. I think why don't we wrap it up with our prediction on the score? If you want to give out your score first, and I'm sure everybody's going to go on their apps and bet the live score, bet the exact score, and win some money. So what do you got for the score of the game?
So again, I'm going to give, this is my score based on the weather not being a factor. Okay.
The weather not being
a factor. Weather being a factor could change that. Again, I think this tight end thing is going to happen, and that's where it's sort of the score. And listen, Theo, this game starts out 0-0. I've been a Steeler fan since a 5-year-old kid in 1977. I don't want to be right, but they say, bet with your head, not with your heart. So my head's telling me, 30-17, Buffalo. Again, I want to be wrong. I'll be glad to come back. We'll do this next week, and I'll say I'm glad I was wrong, and I'll probably do it again, just kind of reverse psychology and see how wrong I can be for how many weeks I can be. But that's just how I feel. Buffalo's playing pretty well. I feel more, they were 8-7. They were in similar position as the Steelers. It didn't look like they were on the outside of the playoffs looking in. Miami looked like they were going to win the AFC East going away, and then Buffalo turned it on. So, I feel better if they were kind of sputtering. Kansas City's that sputtering team. And had Miami won last week, we would be playing Kansas City. And as crazy as it sounds to me to say, I think we match up better right now against a Kansas City team that doesn't have a lot of wide receivers that are making plays, and Mahomes, who's having a very ordinary year for Mahomes. And, but that's not how it worked out. You play to who's in front of you. Again, I hope I'm wrong. I want to be wrong, but I'm just going to give my honest football opinion. But again, weather could be a factor, turnovers, and some of those keys to victory, right? Those fall in the Steelers column. That's where that thing changes.
Yeah. So I do agree with you. The only team that's been as hot as the Steelers at the end of the season has been Buffalo. Granted, I'd probably say the Ravens, but they lost to the Steelers because they sat everybody. But probably be the Ravens, Buffalo, then the Steelers. But I'm gonna say that the game stays in Buffalo. So I'm gonna predict based on the wind and the weather. I'm gonna predict Steelers 13, Buffalo 10. I'm going to predict the upset here.
Wow. I hope you're right.
Outright win. And what I'll do here is I'll take the 10 points. You could take the Bills -10. I'll take the Steelers +10. And whoever loses, next time we do either card video or the Steelers, that person has to wear a pink shirt, whatever pink shirt they can find. They have to wear a pink shirt on that live. How's that sound?
I'm in. Okay. I'm in. It reminds me. It's funny you mentioned a pink shirt. I think I have. I got to find it. I used to run softball teams for many years. Yeah. And I have a shirt. I'm gonna be honest here, Theo. I have a shirt that's pink and it says "Pink Ladies" on it. And anyone that struck out at softball, it was always in my softball bag. And anyone that K'd had to wear that shirt until the next person K'd, and then they got it. And that could be games.
Wow.
In softball. So if I want to wear that shirt. I want to wear that shirt because it means the Steelers won. I'll gladly. So if the Steelers win, and I hope they do,
you're giving me the 10 points though, right? Or am I going to get the 10 points or not?
Yeah. I mean, listen, man, I'd love to see them hold the Bills to 10 points without TJ Watt. I hope you're right.
Okay.
I'm rooting for that.
Right.
So
we got to bet.
I want to be wrong. I don't,
this might be a magical season, man. You remember the year?
How crazy would that be, right? Like everyone's running, Tomlin out of town and we can do a whole nother 20 minutes on, the rumor now that he might leave or step down whenever the season ends, whether that's this week or the following week.
Let's save that because we're already 50 minutes in. Yeah. I actually had that as a bonus topic, but let's save that. And let's hope we talk about next week's game, and we're playing the Ravens, which would be awesome. And
always play them tough, and no matter what the standings say.
Yeah,
we always and even when we're dominant and they're down, they either beat us or play us very tight.
Yep.
It's a division game, so I'm not super scared. I mean, they are playing well. But again, we somehow match up. We're very familiar with their personnel as teams go, and so if that's what happens, I hope that does happen, because that means we won this week. So.
All right. Well, this was a lot of fun, John. I hope there's some other Steeler fans out there that watch this. And if you never checked out John's channel, John, you want to give a quick plug to your channel?
Just real simple, Sports Card Nation podcast. If you kind of type that in, all that stuff will come up and populate. It's been around a little bit, so I'm on the interwebs that Al Gore supposedly invented, and but I'm hoping this was a lot of fun. Thank you for asking me to do it, and we might, if they keep winning, and because we're doing this, we're obviously gonna take the credit for it, Theo, right? And then we're gonna have to keep doing it. It's gonna be a weekly podcast in with our other regular card content as well. So we'll just have to think of a cool name for it, and in the way we go. But no, all joking aside, it's fun. I can talk Steelers football. I know we talk in text and on the phone. And that's where kind of you came up with the idea. Hey, let's do a video, and here we are. So hopefully we have another reason to talk next week, and not about off-season stuff. We're talking about the next matchup.
Awesome. Oh, well, thanks everybody for watching. Thank you, John. And hopefully we'll see you next week, guys.
Yeah, go Steelers.
Go Steelers.